Hi guys, thanks for joining me in my studio today. Today I thought I would do a little bit of pastel drawing, but before I do that I've got to do an underpainting. I've got my square piece of paper on here. In actual fact it's not quite square. I've cut this out of a sheet of watercolour paper so it will fit a particular frame, and I am going to do a watercolour wash, and then I'm going to apply some clear gesso to seal it and make it ready to take pastels. And I've done a thumbnail sketch and I've got the source photo to go with it. So let's get right into it. I just thought I would show you my setup before I start. You can see I've got my watercolour paper fixed to a board with some tape, and I've got my iPad eye level, that's level with the sheet of paper, so I can just quick glance, I can see what I'm doing. I don't have to turn around or look down. It's very easily positioned, and with a swipe I can go between the thumbnail and back to the original image. So this is a thumbnail I did in preparation of this painting. I did that in Critter, so if you want to check the drawing of that out, that's on my digital channel. I put a link in the description below. So what am I going to do first? Well, first thing I'm going to do is put the watercolour wash on. So I'll quickly show you my watercolour paints. So here they are. You can see two very well worn palettes. I've got one where I keep the paints in little pans ready to use. I never clean them out, I just let them go hard, and I use tube paints, and I've got them in another palette so I can squirt some out if I run out. And I don't know what colours I'm going to use. I'm just going to dip into them. Probably be using ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson and burnt umber, I'm guessing, but we'll see. So let's crack on with the painting. I was really excited about this. So of course I totally forgot about the sketching stage, so I thought I'd better get that in first. I'm using a water soluble watercolour pencil, an aquarelle, and it's just a light ochre colour really. I'm not going to do a lot of sketching. I just want to kind of get in the main blocks. Because this is all about the geometric shapes really is what I'm concentrating on, with these sort of geometric shapes of solid colour. That wants to be more like that actually. So I'm just going to speed through the drawing so we can get to the wash. I have to apologise for the fact that I had zoomed in on the camera when I was focusing and forgot to zoom out again. I hope it doesn't spoil the drawing for you too much. That's the sketch done very quickly. It took about 5 minutes. I've changed it slightly from my thumbnail, but that's okay. The thumbnail's really all about the tones that I want to get into. So let's get the watercolour wash on. Right, I'm now going to do the wash. I'm going to get some water in my palette and I'm going to pick up some. Oh, let's do the yellow wash first. So I've got this nice light yellow around the boats, over here a little bit. All my drawings disappearing because it's water soluble watercolor pencil. That might have been a little bit of a mistake, I'm beginning to think. And then we've got this wash, nice dark colour. Just let them flow together. I'm not worried about sort of blocking out what could be highlights because I can go back in them with pastels. Just cut around that roughly. I might change the colours from what I've got in my thumbnail. I did like that as a for the thumbnail, but I'm not so sure if it's right. For the actual painting, need a little bit more raw sienna. Clean water on that. Got these things called cauliflowers forming, but that's okay. It's not like this is a watercolour painting. I could go darker actually. That will do. When it's dry, I'm going to have to go over the sketch again perhaps, but that's it. That's my underpainting done. Very exciting. Can't wait to crack on with this. I've left the watercolour about 6 hours, so it's bone dry now. I'm going to give it a coat of this clear gesso, and that will give it the grit to the texture of the paper that I need to apply the pastels to. I've just speeded this up 2 times just to whiz through it because there's nothing too interesting here except I'm putting a nice even coat of this gesso on top of the watercolour. Then I'll leave that to dry. I've left the gesso or gesso overnight to dry. It's nice and dry now, so I just couldn't wait to get on with this drawing or painting. I went in with a hard pastel, just redefining those shapes again, and I don't know why I did really, because I actually cut some of the boats out. I felt that there was it was just cluttering the scene up too much, but I penciled them in or put them in with the pastel to start with, but a little bit later on I decided that I didn't need them all, so I very quickly got this sketch going. I didn't waste too much time on it because I was just sort of just going over the very, very faint lines that were already there. And then it was all about getting these darks in. So I'm still using a fairly hard pastel to start with. And you can see how well it works on this gesso. I gave it 2 coats actually. So it was, it really did have a nice tooth to it. So I begin with a sort of a sandy coloured green or a dusty green, and then I was just going to build up the darker colours, a little bit greener in the background where those trees are behind the buildings, and then for the stone wall I'm going to bring it in bluer. You can see every stroke is quite deliberate. I'm taking my time. I'm not really rushing with this one. I felt that blue was a little bit too bright when I put it on. But I seem to have persevered with it. But I very quickly changed to another colour. Well, not as quick as I thought. I think, here we go. Is this a darker colour? Yeah, here we are. And then I sort of go over it again. The only problem with the watercolour paper, using watercolour paper, you can see how open the texture is on the paper, and the paper sort of grins through the pastel all of the time. That can be a good thing, I suppose, or a bad thing depending on your point of view. But I felt if I just sort of rubbed it with my fingers slightly, it would sort of push it into the texture of the paper to block it out, which I do a little bit later on, going over those darks again, just building up the darks all the time, because that's what it's all about, this painting. They've got some really dark shapes in it. I decided to put in a few sort of random shapes at the top of that wall to indicate a little bit of things that are sort of happening on the I don't know what you call it, the walkway above that wall. There was all sorts of things as handrails and boxes and crates and all sorts of obstacles in front of the building. So that's what those items are. And I'm trying to keep these boats as loose as I can. Going into the buildings now, putting the windows in. Really speeding along at this. I had to speed it up quite considerably, otherwise the video would have gone on forever. The odd pastels do give me nice sharp edges actually. So I sort of work with the detail with the harder pastels, and then just sort of swept on some strong colour with the soft pastels. Trying to keep them boats really, really loose. As it happened, the more I worked on them, the more defined they seemed to become, really. Popping the path in, or the steps that you can walk alongside up that slanting ramp. Trying to build up the roof line with 3 or 4 different colours. I put in this boat with an orange there, and it didn't work. It just wasn't working for me. It's totally distracting. I felt that the actual focal point is the houses and the roofs of those houses, and the boats just lead you up at an angle to that focal point. And so I shifted what was the focal point, i.e. the boat, to the houses a little bit later on. So I am going to work over that boat and change the colours up on it a little bit. You see I'm sort of indicating detail there on that arbour wall. getting some stronger colours in the foreground. And I'm just playing with texture and colour, and playing with colours next to the darks, next to the light. So I don't want sort of really ultra sharp edges. I want them to sort of merge together. I thought I'd warm it up a bit with a little bit of pink. You see that going in now. So although it's on the path, I decided to put it into the buildings as well. It just adds harmony to the whole of the piece. Making little delicate marks. Bringing that pink into the painting even more. I haven't really worked on the boats yet. I've just sort of got them in as an indication, but I'm going to start adding more colour to them in a minute. Working on the roof again. Just brightening up that colour. You can see here I'm going in with this sort of orange on the boat, and then I'm straight away I'm thinking about changing it, and you can see I put a little bit of purple in there, and I'll get a brush in a minute. And it kind of led me astray, because the orange on the boat caused me to put the purple on the other boats to try and tie it all together, and I didn't like it. And I'll get a brush and dust this all off in a minute or two. So you can see, I think there's a real clash there with that boat and the houses. And there we go. I start to dust some of that off. So I can go in and change the colour up a little bit. So there's an indication of orange on it, but it's not screaming out at you like it was before. Just pop the handrail in there. So here, I was just sort of I wasn't happy with all of the light colours shining through the paper. So I decided just to sort of soften it off a little bit with my finger, and then go over it and put some more colour back on there. I have to say, with a brush, just dusting it lightly with a brush. It just lifted the pastel off, making it possible to just apply more pastels over the top of that. So I'm putting this yellow on with a view that I'm going to go over it with some other colours and just have that shining through a little bit. It's all a bit loud at the minute. I almost quite like the boats that they're so abstract there. I work on them and pick them out and make them much more defined, I suppose. But in a way, I quite like that looseness of them there that's really, really abstract. Working in pastels the way I do, I love the fact that I can't get in a lot of detail. I know people do hyper-realistic work in pastels, but you kind of really need odd pastels, pencils and blending tools and all of that if you want to do hyper-realism. I'm into using soft pastels and putting big bold strokes on, and not worrying too much about the detail. I love the Impressionism, and I love the fact I can get really bright colours on there, and then I can knock them back with a dark pastel and then bring out the highlights again. And you'll see that a lot happening in this painting, where I'm continually playing with lights and darks and changing them around a bit. You can see I've already lost two of the boats that I'd sketched in on the initial drawing. I just felt that they were adding nothing to it, and then I can put like highlights into these boats, these greens going in there, which will get knocked back later. And I can make little defined marks of colour, and the same with dark tones, and work over it. And you'll see it change quite dramatically where I've got all of this light yellow on the bottom right. That will go as I refer to my reference image again and look at the reference thumbnail image. That changes quite dramatically over and over again. And you'll see me picking up the brush, dusting off colour to try a subtly different other colour. You notice the dark areas, I'm using colours of the same tone. They might be different colours, but they are of the same weight. That's quite important. So at this point, I'm just going to put some music on, stop talking, and let you enjoy the rest of the painting. And I will come back at the end just to finish off saying one or two more things. So please watch it to the end, or you might miss something quite valuable. You never know. So I'm back again. Unfortunately, I failed to record one bit of the painting, but what you'll see is that I have actually I was not happy how sharp the boats were, and I wanted to lose some of the edges. So you can see I've taken that dark blue purpley colour and used it to soften off the edges of some of the boats so they almost disappear into the shadows, and then I just put a little bit of highlights where the light's catching the tops of the boats, and that is the finished pastel drawing. You can see it there where I've taken the tape off, and I'm really quite chuffed with that. I think it's worked out quite well in the end. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up as always is much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.